welcome to this edition of Please Note. And one of the things I love to do is to introduce you to some rather remarkable people who serve our God. And I'm with one of them, the Right Reverend Mary Gray-Reeve, Bishop of El Camino. Mary, thank you for being with us.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Bishop, you just published your second book, Unearthing My Religion, Real Talk About Real Faith. What's the book about?
Well, the intent of the book was to talk about Christian faith, theology, and spirituality without being very technical. My own opinion as a Christian leader and as a lifelong Christian and Episcopalian is that we are most comfortable in the church speaking to ourselves because we already speak the language we speak, and so talking to other people who understand us is easy and good and edifying, and we enjoy that. But in this day and age when the common average person in the culture and the common culture itself does not speak Christian, or doesn't really understand that in any kind of multifaceted way, I think for us as the church, and then also for the person who might be spiritually seeking and looking at Christianity, simpler language is actually very important. And it's really, I think, needs to become sort of a spiritual practice for us in the church, and particularly for us as Episcopalians, because we are not a denomination that segregates ourselves from the culture, but actually seeks to dwell in it, to live our faith in it, to include other people in it who may not otherwise have access to the gospel because of their lives or for whatever reason. And so my prayer and my hope is that this book, as someone becomes interested in this person, Jesus, that we talk about and whom we follow, and this Christian way, perhaps by the example of another person, they could pick up the book and actually discover what it means to them personally, discover their own language, their own faith language. My own experience of people seeking is, it's like I'm looking for something, but I don't know what it is, and I don't have any words for it. And so hopefully the book could help that person do that. For our people in the pew, our laity, they're our greatest resource. Their job is to be in the world and living and speaking their faith in ways that are relevant and appropriate to their context. And hopefully it could help them too, because being people of the book, we often rely on the words that someone else wrote and printed and what we do corporately, because our worship is very corporate. But often the task of sharing faith is a very one-on-one experience. And so my hope for the average person in the pew would be that their faith story could be better articulated through reading what I wrote.
That's one of the things you did. I mean, you began by talking about faith stories and people's own stories. Why did you start there?
Well, because I think it is real when we start with our own story. So it is earthed in our own story. I mean, Christianity is not it's not a theology. It's not a moral faith. It's a following of a following of Jesus, with whom we have a personal relationship, and we live out that personal relationship with others in community. And so stories matter, and everywhere in the gospel, people bring their whole selves to Jesus. They bring their whole story, and he never asks them to leave any part of it out. And so every bit of us, whether it's positive or a negative, no matter what it is, it has an opportunity for God's grace to be revealed in it. And sometimes we dismiss our stories. We just think, well, nobody wants to pay attention to me, or I haven't done anything very special. And following Jesus actually tells us that's not the point, that actually everywhere grace may be known. And so when we explore our own story and we see how it can connect with other people, that becomes an opportunity for sharing good news.
Your book is particularly timely for us in North Carolina, but for the church as a whole, because we're hoping to enter into a series, a time of faith sharing during the Easter season. And so your book is really right on for us.
Oh, good. Thank you. I'm glad.
You also talk about spiritual practices. I mean, you tell the stories of people on their faith journeys, but you talk about the spiritual practices, or what used to be called the disciplines. What does that have to do with it?
Well, anything we practice, we get better at, and we become more conscious of faith as we actually do it. This is not an entirely objective thing. I mean, for people who are theologians and the notion of orthodoxy and so on, okay, it's like a thing. But faith is not a thing. It is us. It's reality. It's our life. So the practices are the intent of them is to become more conscious of God's grace as a reality, internal spiritual reality of life. And I've just used really simple languages because oftentimes people think spiritual practices are very complicated, or only certain people can have them. Really religious or really those people can have them. And for example, the first one, just in the first chapter, which is about spirituality, the spiritual practice is just noticing. How much of the day do we wander through without actually noticing? We're so busy moving on to the next thing, or our brain is hijacked by our whatever thoughts and ruminations we have going on, to just actually stop and notice the presence of God, notice the peace of God, notice the grace of God. To just be in the moment is a very simple practice. It doesn't cost anything. It doesn't require anything of us. There's no judgment in it. You just settle into the moment and start to notice the intangible spiritual realities of life, which are really the things most people want anyway. You just can't buy that stuff at a store. That's one of the practice. The first practice, the most basic practice. Actually, if you get noticing down in your day, your spiritual life will be, I think, deeply enhanced.
I remember reading a book years ago. It was Keith Miller's, I forgot the title of the book, but that was one of the things that this was 20 years ago. And he said, if you just stop and pay attention to the people who come your way during the day, you will discover that God has been moving in your life and you just didn't even notice.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
You have given voice. This book, Unearthing My Religion, really will help Episcopalians who are by nature faith-sharing shy, help us to find our voice. Thank you very much for being with us on Please Note. And my friends, I encourage you to go out and get a copy, whether the Kindle edition I have here or a book edition of Unearthing My Religion, real talk about real faith from a real bishop. Bishop Mary, thank you.